It was worked out to where I can, do that and play at the same time and commentate. And it won't be too, much of a burden on me.
What was Jay's reaction?
I haven't talked to him about it.
A TV thing where he's going to be on the pregame show. He said he hadn't hashed it out with you yet, so I don't know how familiar you are with the details, but how do you make sure that doesn't detract from...
That's first. I have no idea what you're talking about. Pregame show for what?
He's going to be on the pregame show this year. Surprise.
This is something I do on my off time, and it's cool, and I'm appreciative of Fox for allowing me to do it, and my team organization, because obviously they know about it and they had signed off on it before it actually took place.
Josh Norman defending himself on why he has a TV gig. He's setting himself up for the future after football. Max, does he have a point?
Yeah, he's right. Listen, he followed the rules. Josh Norman followed the rules. If I could somehow make an NFL team and I did that, I don't have to notify anybody, right? I could just go do that. Do I need to notify? As long as I could do it in my own time, do I need to notify my employer, or can I just go play in the NFL? But for NFL players, it's different because there's a sense that, yeah, you followed the letter of the law, you followed the rules, but you violated the spirit of the rule. And what's the spirit of the rule in the NFL? We own you. That's the spirit of the rule. We own you. And whenever a player does something to violate that spirit, like, actually, you don't own me, you just employ me to play football. It's not like he's taking a risk with his health or anything. He's doing it in his own spare time. Well, you could have informed us. What do you mean? Kind of like informed you and sort of asked permission to? In other words, you own... No, you don't. You don't own him. He's absolutely right about that. Now, the issue that a fan might have with Josh Norman is, and although he's a very competitive guy, I think any fan would want him on the team, is like, did you drink the Kool-Aid? We like our players to drink the Kool-Aid, and meaning, yes, winning a championship is the most important thing in my life. There's nothing more important than winning a championship. Win a Super Bowl. That's what we want our players to believe, fans of the teams. Even though the NFL is largely a TV show, it's a lot of what it is, and the Super Bowl is just another TV show for which you're not even paid that much more. And here, Josh Norman is saying, yeah, you know what? I'd like to play on that TV. I'd like to be in that TV show, too. I am a competitive person. But you know what? I also have this other TV show I'm going to do, and I don't need to ask you guys about it. I agree with him, Stephen A.
I don't. I don't agree with him because of a couple of reasons. I do appreciate the fact that he elaborated on the fact that they knew. Because yesterday we had the impression that they didn't know because he said they didn't know, he just did it. And so we were saying, well, you're supposed to let your team know. You ain't supposed to make a decision like this and not tell the team. That's not wise. So it's good to hear him say he was joking, that they obviously did know. He don't know why Jay Gruden didn't tell y'all he didn't know, because obviously the team had to sign off on it if it happened. Okay, fair enough in that regard. So he didn't break any rules here. He doesn't deserve to be excoriated. Fine. The flip side to it is that you are going to a new team. You are the new 5-year, $75 million dude with $50 million in guaranteed dollars. You have a lot to prove. And there is something to be said for being all in. Now, it's not for me nor anyone else to question the work ethic and the commitment of Josh Norman. He wouldn't be where he is today, coming from where he came from, being undrafted, working through the practice squad, etc., to get to the point that he's at. We understand that. But now you've reached new heights, and you are the guy that's considered the elite corner and the elite catch in the offseason. Yet what were we hearing during training camp? That you were getting scorched by Deshaun Jackson. That Deshaun Jackson was giving it to you. Now, if you know anything about Deshaun Jackson, he'll give it to anybody because he's an elite deep threat, and he could put it on anybody when healthy. The flip side is nobody wants to hear that from the dude with the new $50 million in guarantees. And then you have to take into account, his mouth. I love Josh Norman, love talking to him. He's a good dude. I wish nothing but I root for him all the time. And I think that he's very bright, and I think that he knows the things to say and not to say. But that's me. The team may feel a little bit differently. And so going to a new team, considering how loquacious he is, considering the kind of guy that he is in terms of speaking his mind and what have you, now you're worried about having to reel somebody like that in. And if you're a team, you want to know about all of this before you agree to give him $75 million and $50 million in guaranteed dollars. But that wasn't the case. And then when you say it's your off time, we all know that in the NFL, your off time is the off season. Even on off days, it ain't your off time. Why? Because football is that complicated, football is that vicious, football is that suffocating, and it literally consumes you for a 6-month period. He would be absolutely right if he was talking about what he's doing in February, March, April, May, and June. The fact that he's talking about what he's doing during the season and acting like that's his off time, I kind of agree with him, but I'm pretty sure most NFL teams wouldn't. He knows that, but did it anyway. And that's where the potential complication
because it becomes public because it's on TV. I mean, I know of lots of players at their best throughout football history, including today, and maybe even especially some quarterbacks who have a pretty good time in their off time during the season. It's not necessarily on television, but it would require just as much effort. It's just as much of a distraction, if you want to call it that. This is just being made public because it's the nature of TV, that it's public. I don't think that just because it's during the season, he's not entitled to off time.
I don't think so either. What I'm saying is it doesn't matter what he thinks or you and I think. My concern is what his employer thinks, regardless of what they say. Everything's fine now because it's training camp and preseason is on the way. When the season comes about and you find yourself in dicey or precarious situations where you might be giving up a few yardages, where you might get the receivers might get the better of you or something like that, those kind of things come into the equation and could ultimately affect the way you're looked upon, which is my concern for him. I'm not knocking him for it. I'm saying to walk around and act like he has no reason to be concerned. That's just foolish because the folks in Washington, those Redskins fans, trust me, mess up. And watch what they bring up.
I was in D.C. for 15 months when I was hosting Around the Horn.
Yep.
I had an apartment down there and spent some time down there. I don't know that there's a more passionate fan base about their football team than the Washington area fans. I mean, they are crazy about that franchise. You get anyone you meet in the street, anywhere, any public gathering, you talk to anyone, that's what's on their brain. So I hear you. But here's another Yankee analogy, I guess. You're going to hear a lot about this. I'm a Yankees fan. Reggie Jackson, kids, he's a Hall of Famer. He was a big deal once upon a time. Reggie Jackson got to New York, Stephen A., as a free agent, right? Now, here's a guy who struck out a lot, and he made big comments talking about he's the straw that stirred the drink when he signed his free agent deal, late 70s, kids. Who does this guy think he is, and blah, blah, blah. And he struck out plenty in big situations, in clutch moments. Hurt the team at times by striking out. Feuded with the manager, Billy Martin, the owner, George Steinbrenner, teammates, Thurman Munson, the whole thing. But in the World Series, he hit 5 home runs, 3 in a game, and they won the World Series. So he's Mr. October. If you are Josh Norman, or you're the type of guy to bring this kind of attention on yourself, you might get burned. In fact, you will get burned at times by Julio Jones and Des Bryant and Odell Beckham Jr. and Antonio Brown, because there's no containing these guys with these rules in this NFL. That's going to happen from time to time, just like Reggie Jackson struck out. But when the chips are on the line, if Josh Norman performs, then none of this stuff matters. In fact, it only makes it all better. Really, what it comes down to now is he's applying more pressure to himself to come through when it matters most. And the question becomes, do you think he's the kind of guy who's going to do it or not? I think he is.
And just can't let any of it obviously become a distraction. So we shall see.